funny. You're my second Batman tonight.
Are we interrupting something? Because it sure looks like we're interrupting something.
Double wedgie achievement unlocked.
Your angel of death awaits.
I'm not Anton. I am the doll maker.
Okay, fine. You may know him better as Frankenstein's monster. You know the beginning of Frank's story, created by Victor Frankenstein, or Frankenstein if you prefer. The monster eventually found himself frozen in ice, being thawed a century later. After falling in with some rough crowds, he would eventually go on to join various monster hunting teams, including the Fearsome Four and later the all-new Howling Commandos, after being recruited by Agent Coulson. Since he's kind of already dead, he can't really die, and since his cells aren't alive, he's even immune to disease. And I mean, considering he's the star of one of the greatest horror franchises in the world, I'd say he's pretty scary. Number 9, Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler definitely isn't what most people think of when they think scary superhero, but he was on my mind since I just did an alternate versions list for him. A link down below, maybe? That said, he's definitely one of the freakiest looking heroes out there, largely because of his demonic heritage. Now look, I'm no bigot, but the dude definitely looks like a demon, which is fine in comic books, but if I ran into him in a dark alley, I would not be pleased, especially if he suddenly teleported behind me. He also ticks the immortal box since he already died and had to sacrifice his soul to come back to life, which sounds kinda selfish, but it was actually for the greater good. Long story. Number 8, Deadman. Boston Brand was a circus acrobat, but after being murdered, he made a deal with Ramakrishna, a Hindu goddess, to give him powers to find his murderer. But he's a decent guy, so if he sees someone being bad while he's finding the murderer, he stops them by possessing people. This led to him working with various super teams, including Justice Society International. And I gotta say, this was a pretty easy choice, since Deadman is a spooky, spooky ghost, which instantly gives him both immortality cred and scary cred. Making my job easy. Another nice thing is that he looks a lot more villainous than most heroes, which also means he looks pretty darn scary. Sometimes. Other times he's a bit goofy, but we won't talk about those times. He's scary, he's immortal, he's on the list. Next, number 7, the Immortal Hulk. Yeah, Hulk in general is pretty scary and pretty immortal, but Immortal Hulk is even scarier and even immortal. Not only does he have a healing factor keeping him young and strapping, but the whole point of the character is that this Hulk keeps bringing Banner back to life whenever he dies. So like, yeah, that's pretty darn immortal. Immortal Hulk, unlike other modern versions, only comes out in the evening if Bruce Banner is injured or dead, and apparently Immortal Hulk is the most powerful one yet. So not only does he look terrifying, but he's also even stronger than previous incarnations. Plus, as I said, he only comes out at night, and we all know nighttime is super spooky. Number 6, Ghost Rider. I think we all knew Ghost Rider would be on here. I doubt I need to really explain why he's scary, but in case you're totally lost, he's a biker with a flaming skull and demon chains who can consume souls and cause you to feel every bit of pain you've ever inflicted on someone. So yeah, probably not great to run into in a dark alley, especially if you're a jerk. In terms of immortality, it's stated in Ghost Rider's Heavens on Fire number 6 that only God can destroy a Ghost Rider, since he created them. True, the concept of God in the Marvel Universe is a bit shaky, so this might not be meant to be taken literally, but I think it's fairly safe to call them immortal. Number 5, Venom. When it comes to scary comic book characters, Venom is definitely one of the first a lot of people think of. I know he gave me nightmares as a kid, although I also had a talking toy of him, which was my favorite. Represent. Venom is freaky not only for his terrifying appearance, but also because the idea of having an alien symbiote latch onto me and control me sounds awful. However, the most terrifying thing about Venom is talking about him/it/them. Am I talking about the symbiote? The combination of them? Which version of the combination? Who's with the symbiote? Which of the dozen retcons are we referring to? And how many people will yell at me in the comments if I get it wrong? Seriously? It's a nightmare. In terms of immortality, we haven't really seen a symbiote latch onto a host for long enough to know if they're immortal that way, but the symbiotes themselves are believed to be, so I think that counts. See? Confusing. Number 4, Swamp Thing. Swamp Thing is definitely among the lesser known superheroes on this list. Some people may not even be aware that he's a good guy. since characters based on horror tropes tend to be pretty evil. But hey, as we learned with Frank, you mustn't judge a book by its cover, even if it is a pretty scary cover. Swamp Thing came into being when scientist Alec Holland had an incident with his biorestorative formula, causing his consciousness to enter a nearby swamp. This consciousness was then able to enter any plant life and use it as a body of sorts. Despite its horrid appearance, Swamp Thing would go on to find love and fight to protect humanity and nature. And yes, the Swamp Thing is immortal. As long as there is plant life somewhere in the universe, there's somewhere for Swamp Thing's consciousness to live. It's like he has like 8 gazillion Horcruxes, except he doesn't have to split his soul. Not too shabby. Number 3, Lobo. Lobo is a big, strong, loud, arrogant, violent blowhard from the planet Zarnia. He's also, full disclosure, one of my favorite characters, so I'm a wee bit biased here. That said, he definitely fits the criteria. Immortal? Check. He's such a wacko that he was straight up banished from the afterlife. Scary? Check. Freaky looks aside, his name translates to "He who devours your entrails and thoroughly enjoys it." And the main man lives up to that name, having exterminated almost everyone on his home planet, including children, with flying scorpions. Yeah. Lobo was created as a parody of all the 90s comic books that were hell-bent on being super gritty and dark and intense, and he is definitely all of those things, with a tongue planted firmly in one's cheek. Number 2, Spawn. The thing with this list is that most superheroes look, well, heroic, which generally means they don't look very scary. Not so with Spawn. Al Simmons was a cop who was murdered and sent to hell, only to make a deal with Malebolgia to become a Hellspawn, in exchange for seeing his wife one last time. And he's pretty darn cool. Sure, the 97 version looked a bit more like a WWE character than Demon Spawn, but if you want any proof that he's a scary dude, check out the trailer for the 2020 reboot, because my goodness, he terrifying. In terms of immortality, Spawn won't die of old age, and generally won't die of anything unless beheaded by a weapon of heaven. Or if you manage to kill him in the Dead Zone, an alley on Earth that counts as Heaven's domain. So like, you should probably avoid that alley, or he'll get murdered by homeless men again. True story. Number 1, Deadpool. That's right, nerds. I don't care that I've talked about him a million times on this channel. If you give me an opportunity to slap Deadpool onto a list, I'm slapping him onto the list. For the 3 people who somehow don't know by now, Wade Wilson is a wisecracking mercenary who, through an experimental treatment, gained absurd regenerative abilities, to the point where he basically can't die. And why is he scary? Well, because his skin looks like this. Yeah, those are tumors. You're welcome. Plus, he isn't exactly the most stable person, so you kinda gotta watch your back even if he is your friend. As you may have guessed, he's my favorite hero of all time, and I am absurdly excited for him to join the MCU. Just please, for the love of God, bring back Hugh Jackman for one more movie. It needs to happen. Please.
In at number 10, Spectre. This deceased and then resurrected detective known as Spectre is a hero with a great power and little limitations. Spectre possesses the spirit of the gods' vengeance and is charged with punishing the guilty people of the world. He wields limitless abilities and can reshape reality, alter time, space, and change matter. So essentially he can do whatever he wants. Now imagine if he turned to a villainous lifestyle. With that kind of power he would be unstoppable, and because he's already dead, virtually invincible. Number 9, Ant-Man. While it may sound strange for Ant-Man to become a villain, think about it for a minute. He started as a petty criminal before he even became the Ant-Man, and was even arrested and sentenced to 3 years in prison. If Ant-Man began using the suit to pursue a life of crime and villainy, just imagine the damage that he could do. He could easily shrink down and weasel his way into whatever person or hero he wanted, making it easier to take out foes from the inside by destroying their internal organs without them even knowing who's responsible. Also, let's not forget when he transformed into that giant version of himself in Captain America Civil War. With that large state, he could do some serious damage. In at number 8, the Hulk. We have already seen the sheer amount of damage that the Hulk can do. He's unstable, he's powerful, and when he takes over Bruce Banner, you can kiss that logic goodbye. Now imagine if the Hulk went full evil. Good luck, society. Good luck, world. If people are constantly trying to fight him, be it military, superhero, or whoever, it would only make him more angry. And we know the angrier he becomes, the stronger he gets. If you want to see what would happen if the Hulk went to the dark side, look up the comic book storyline Future Imperfect. It shows a bearded Hulk who calls himself Maestro as he takes over the world. Sadly, the world doesn't really survive his destruction. In at number 7, Storm. Storm is quite possibly one of the strongest X-Men and at one point was even worshipped as a goddess. She's even able to control the weather and as a result can create catastrophic damage. The only thing preventing her from not doing this is her moral compass. If that somehow went away, she could conjure up tornadoes, blizzards, lightning storms, essentially anything she wanted to destroy the earth. You know, if global warming doesn't beat her to it. In at number 6, Batman. Bruce Wayne not only has the power of his Batman technologies, but he's also a massively wealthy figure in Gotham. Luckily for that city, he's on their side, even if his Batman costume is scary as all hell. Plus, he's literally dressed as an animal that most people have terrible nightmares from. And he as well is guided by a moral compass and is essentially against killing people, which perhaps the only reason why his enemies are still alive. Imagine if he just decided to become evil. He could potentially be Gotham's top mob boss and not too many people could prevent it. He's a master of martial arts and a brilliant detective, so solving his crimes would be difficult in and of itself. In at number 5, Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze is inches away from becoming a villain. He's possessed by the spirit of vengeance, and while Johnny tries to make the Ghost Rider help people, the Rider is a demon that couldn't care less. If he allowed the demon to fully take the wheel, it could be very painful for any hero or regular person in his way. Mainly because he possesses the penance stare, which forces his enemy to relive the pain of every person they've hurt. Number 4, Scarlet Witch. The Scarlet Witch possesses some very unpredictable and intensely powerful abilities, which even to the Avengers makes her a risk factor. In the comic books, she's even had her fair share of moments as a villain, most notably in the House of M when she tricked many heroes into becoming villains themselves. If she became a real villain in the MCU, things could get squirrely, especially with her ability to alter the very nature of reality itself. In at number 3, Wolverine. Although he is one of the good guys, Wolverine possesses a temper that even scares his teammates every now and again. His extreme senses, rapid healing, and unbreakable claws have made him a target for villains to capture and brainwash. Wolverine has been used for more evil deeds than he can probably count, always trying to manipulate him into turning into a villain. Number 2, Superman. Kal-El is upheld as the true hero of truth and justice. Because of that, we need to remind ourselves that he holds back a lot from hurting people. However, if Superman went rogue, much like he did in the comic book storyline Injustice, things would be fatal for the planet. In the comic book, he uses an authoritarian approach after reaching his breaking point and goes on to rule the planet. He's so powerful that if he were to be a villain, it would be game over for Earth. Lastly, at our number 1 spot, Charles Xavier. As we saw in Logan, Professor X killed most of the heroes on the planet in the disaster at Westchester just because his dementia was acting up. Even the government has classified him as a weapon of mass destruction. The only thing stopping him from doing purposeful evil acts is his morals and his drive to use his powers for good. If he used Cerebro, he could access every single mind on the planet and do insurmountable damage. Everything from restructuring memories to completely changing their personality.
In the number 10 spot, we have Swamp Thing. DC Swamp Thing is extremely freaky to look at to begin with, and it's even freakier when you realize the Swamp Thing is not a transformed super person, but rather an entity who absorbed the consciousness of a scientist named Alec Holland, who had to seek refuge in the swamp after thugs invaded his facility, and he never made it out alive. Swamp Thing actually did appear in House of Secrets for a standalone horror story, as well as his own 1982 movie, which was kind of a letdown, but did go on to become a cult classic. So time for a revival, anyone? Coming in at number 9 is Deadman. Boston Brand is literally a dead man walking. The DC hero was a former trapeze artist who performed in a red costume with corpse-like makeup, already freaky. Brand was assassinated during a performance. His spirit is allowed to live on and seek justice, and he does this by passing through and possessing the bodies of the living. Fun fact as well, Deadman's debut in Strange Adventures number 205 also included the first known depiction of drugs in a comic approved by the Comics Code Authority. Next up at number 8 we have the Hulk. We're all pretty familiar with Marvel's Hulk by now, so he doesn't seem as scary to us as he really is. What truly is terrifying about the Hulk, aside from the green giant smashing thing, is that he is the product of a fractured psyche, and something a lot of us can relate to. Bruce Banner lives in constant fear that his anger will bring out the Hulk. Meanwhile, thousands of people worldwide struggle with this exact fear that their emotional damage will lead them to become someone that they're not, or do things that they regret to the people that they love. A different kind of scary, but a relatable fear nonetheless. In the number 7 spot we have Simon Dark. Simon Dark is a DC vigilante who operates out of Gotham City. In fact, he shares a name with a popular nursery rhyme in Gotham to make things more eerie. If you're good, he'll stay away. If you're bad, he'll make you pay. Even worse to know is that Simon's Frankenstein-esque appearance is due to the fact that he's composed of the bodies of 20 young boys, stitched together by a medical maniac with the help of a dark cult. Thankfully, he's chosen to use his zombie powers for good. Coming in at number 6 is Brother Voodoo. A Strange Tales alumni from 1973, Marvel's Brother Voodoo has been frequently likened to Doctor Strange, and even replaced him as Sorcerer Supreme in the New Avengers. Voodoo derives his powers from the Loa, the gods of, you guessed it, voodoo. And with that, plus his training from mentor Papa Jumbo, he has the abilities to summon the dead, mesmerize people, and you can bet he probably has a ton of those creepy pin dolls laying around. Next up at number 5 we have the Hanged Man. Image Comics' Hanged Man of Astro City haunts and watches over Shadow Hill, and he does so silently, eerily, just floating along with his head still inside a noose. He is often drawn to those who are in need of comfort after traumatic events, although I'm pretty sure the sight of a pitch black figure with a sack on its head drifting noiselessly towards me isn't going to exactly comfort me. Next up at number 4 is Shadowhawk. There are many people who have taken up the position of Image's Shadowhawk, so for this video we're focusing on one of the main representations by Paul Johnston. Paul was attacked and injected with HIV positive blood and ended up feeling like a prisoner in his own body. So what did he do with that? He took to the streets to rid them of the crime he had encountered, and in turn would break the spines of villains to leave them paralyzed, just as he felt. Easily the most sadistic superhero out there, but also one of the most complicated backstories. In the number 3 spot we have Professor X. Okay, wait a second. Professor X is like the ultimate good guy dad of Marvel, right? Well, usually yes. But have you ever imagined what it would be like to live in the same vicinity as someone whose telepathic powers are as immense as X's? Not only can he read minds, but he can control them too and alter memory, as he has done on his own team multiple times. What makes him scarier is that he will literally stop at nothing to defend his cause, and he always thinks he is doing the right thing. Well, newsflash, even villains think they are doing the right thing. For them. Coming in at number 2 is Ghost Rider. The movies really did not do Ghost Rider justice. Nicolas Cage knew this and he even declined to do a 3rd movie. That's when you know your movie kinda sucked. Focusing on the Marvel Johnny Blaze character specifically, he gave up his soul to Satan to save his father, and with that deal he became imbued with the essence of hell. Fiery motorcycle, skeletal body, and the ability to use his penance stare to make his enemies feel every bit of violence they've ever inflicted on other people. Pretty heavy, pretty spooky stuff. And finally, in the number 1 spot is Morbius the Living Vampire. Marvel's story of Dr. Michael Morbius is that he was a brilliant scientist whose experimentation with vampire bats went completely wrong, transforming him into a pseudo-vampire. And with being a vampire comes the uncontrollable thirst for blood, not sparkliness. Classic Dracula inspiration with a superhero twist, he is a tortured and tragic soul that isn't even safe around those he holds dear, as is obvious when he kills his oldest friend and partner Nikos. Nothing tastes better than a best friend.
Number 10. Tim Drake from Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Here we're hopping over to the DCAU, that being the DC Animated Universe, which began in 1992 with Batman the Animated Series, and ballooned to include multiple series, only concluding chronologically with Justice League Unlimited, and canonically with Batman Beyond. Batman Beyond is where we're currently headed. This series was a continuation of the Batman mythos, where the mantle was passed on, or more accurately at the start, taken over by Terry McGinnis, a kid with a bit of a rough past who, with the help of mentorship from Bruce Wayne, would become the new Batman, become quite the hero in his own right. During one of his adventures he had a run-in with the Joker, that's right, the joke from back in the day, and learned the horrifying tale of Batman's final encounter with him, a tale wherein, kidnapped by Harley Quinn, Tim Drake, Robin, was tortured until he became a little mini version of the Joker, meant to be their child, the Joker and Harley's. This experience traumatized him and forever altered the dynamic of the Bat family. It's dark stuff, and yet all they felt was too far was how the Joker dies. into it. Number 9. Hawkeye, Avengers 2012. Hawkeye first appeared briefly in the MCU in Thor in what was essentially a cameo role that was really exciting to comic book fans because it heralded what was to come, that being the coming together of all of the Avengers, and that there was actually going to be an Avengers movie. So when 2012 came, the hype for this movie was real. People wanted to see the team together. But within the opening 20 minutes, Hawkeye is brainwashed by Loki and his scepter, and he spends the majority of the film doing his bidding, Loki that is, which leads to a cool fight with Black Widow, where she breaks through that programming by just hitting him really hard on the head. Still, for some, it was not the most compelling showcase for the character. At least they kinda dealt with it, unlike Tony's PTSD, which was often mentioned but never delved into. Number 8. Justice League Unlimited Meta Brawl. Oh yes, we get to go back to the DCAU twice on this list. Today is a good day. Justice League Unlimited was the spin-off of the animated series Justice League, the main difference being cleaner animation and a huge increase of the hero roster. When they say unlimited, they mean unlimited. In this episode, the female members of the league are acting weird, they're tired, they have mysterious bruises, something doesn't add up. So Wildcat and Green Arrow decide to investigate, both being particularly worried about Black Canary, whom they both have a connection with. The revelation? The villain Sonar is brainwashing the female contestants so that they can fight for cash money, and because people want to see them fight. They have a fetish about chicks, fights, superpower chick fight. This ring is run by the villainess Roulette, because she knows what's up. Needless to say, the women aren't pleased when they realize that this has been going on. And this group includes the likes of Wonder Woman, Hawkgirl, the Huntress, and of course the aforementioned Black Canary, so yikes. Number 7. Supergirl, Batman/Superman Apocalypse. Superman and Batman are best friends, despite what Dawn of Justice wants you to think. They always have been, it's just that over time, writers have come to acknowledge that the differences in their personalities and methods and their dispositions would lead to them having probably a bit of a rough start or friction before they became these besties. One comic series that took place firmly after this warm-up was the 2003 crossover series Superman/Batman. This series was also hilariously shippy unintentionally. The first big arc was Public Enemies, where they dealt with President Lex. The second was the Apocalypse arc, which reintroduced Supergirl, again who had had quite the confusing time since she was killed off in Crisis on Infinite Earths back in 1985. Her reintroduction here is very teen girl extraordinaire, and she ends up being brainwashed by Apocalypse and becoming one of his female Furies, because Batman and Superman just don't understand. She gets a costume that I love, but also she's like 16, so calm down, comic. Number 6. Superboy, Teen Titans Volume 3, number 24. Superboy, after being the personification of the 90s, was soft retconned to being a hero who wore jeans and a t-shirt, and was also the genetic son of Superman and Lex Luthor. My favorite fact of all time, that they cannot take away from me no matter how many retcons happen. Collects for life, Smallville ruined me. In the Teen Titans, this very much resulted in a who am I? Am I a hero or a villain? And Lex was quick to use this to his advantage, manipulating the boy until he broke down and became evil for a little bit, which meant he had to shave his head, because how else would we know? He needs to look like Lex to be evil. And he also cut an L into his shirt over the S. In short, it was a great must-read. Number 5. Nightcrawler. From X2, going over to Fox and their X-Men universe for this number. A universe that gets very little cred these days, but was actually a huge deal back in the day. X2, X-Men United from 2003, opened on a brainwashed mutant, in this case Nightcrawler, attacking the president. This was all part of a plot to make mutants look bad, so that controls could be more readily placed upon them. This was achieved by using a mutant with mind control powers, who is being controlled by the bigoted William Stryker. X2 is honestly pretty solid. Go back and give it a rewatch if you have time, or if you want to. I mean, you may have better things to do with your quarantine. There is a topical statement that will in no way date this video at all. Number 4. Wolverine, Enemy of the State. This is a story by Mark Miller. This story was noteworthy enough to also get some what-ifs out of it. In one of them, Wolverine gets killed by Kitty Pryde, who sticks her hand through his head, destroying his brain. She loses her hand in the process, but you know, you win some, you lose some. In this story, Wolverine is captured by Hydra and brainwashed a la Spider-Woman, and sent back onto the streets as a killing machine. This was a 12-chapter arc and was basically a gore fest of Wolverine slashing ex-friends and enemies alike. You can't go wrong with Wolverine, usually. So this comic sold well, and has for some become a classic Wolverine tale. Poor Wolverine, he gets brainwashed a lot when you think about it. When can he just be James? times. Number 3. Sue Storm, Malice. This was a time. So after the death of her daughter, Sue Storm was going through, well, a rough patch. They would eventually find a workaround for Valeria's death plot, and she would have her time travel a whole bunch of stuff. But for now, she's dead, and Sue's upset about it, understandably. However, this is treated as odd by the men around her, especially her husband Reed. She starts to change. She gets angrier. She gets a sexy new costume with a 4-shaped chest boob window as you do. This was all said to be a result of the Psycho Man's manipulation, pulling out her dark side, transforming her into the villainess Malice. Or you know, she was just sad because something really traumatic happened and no one else seemed to care. Nah, mental manipulation. That's the answer. Fresh off your stillbirth, it's not even a big deal. Just ask Reed. Honestly, the rationale does work though. Like, Psycho Man got in there because she was fragile and because she didn't have that much emotional support. Number 2. Bucky, the Winter Soldier. The reappearance of Bucky Barnes was a big deal. For a long time, he was considered as the one permanent comic book death, but then the Winter Soldier story arc occurred in 2005, and Bucky was back as a brainwashed Hydra agent. This of course was traumatizing for Cap, but was played up to much greater effect in the MCU, where their friendship was front and center. In fact, it served as a driving force for Cap in a couple of the films, till the end of the line, until the last film. That's where they don't even get to have an on-screen goodbye, because arcs are meaningless when you can just tell fans they're being silly for caring. Bucky would be forever changed by his brainwashing. Not the same Bucky as before, but someone new. He has managed to build a rich life for himself, however. And in at number 1, Iron Man: The Crossing. Oh, this story was infamous, and you would think Marvel would have learned a crucial lesson from it. Namely, that the whole "this person was evil the whole time, the entire time" tends not to work or be well received. In this arc, it turned out that Tony had been working for Kang the Conqueror for years. You know, Hail Hydra style. In order to deal with this, the Avengers have to go back in time to a pre-brainwashed Tony. And to do that, they have to enlist the help of 19-year-old Tony Stark, one who's cool and full of rude tude. And the teen self has to take on the adult self. And for a while there, we had a teenage Tony Stark as Iron Man. In this story, Kang had chosen Tony to brainwash, get this, after his attempts to brainwash Hank Pym failed. That would have been way more believable. You could even have had it play into the plot about why he was so unstable. Missed opportunity.
In at number 10, Reed Richards. Not too many people view Reed Richards as a scary superhero, at least at face value. However, if you look into what he is truly capable of, you'll take a second glance real quick. Reed has one of the highest levels of intelligence in the MCU, yet despite this, many fans view him as more of a mad scientist than anything else. For example, the time that he and others cloned Thor and sent him to attack the Anti-Superhuman Registration Act heroes. That may sound like an act of defense, but in reality the clone was killing superheroes that were actually close friends of not just the Fantastic Four, but Reed Richards as well. On top of that, Mr. Fantastic's ability to convert the mass of his entire body into a highly malleable state at will could be used to do some pretty heinous things if he ever wanted to. Things we wouldn't wish on our worst enemies. In at number 9, the Inhumans. With all of these behind the scenes deals over ownership of certain heroes to be used for the big screen, many fans were disappointed to learn that essentially the bland Inhumans would be the new moniker for mutants in the MCU. This has led many fans to not help but think that the Inhumans are being crammed in our face in lieu of not getting the rights to the X-Men. The team appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 2 and Marvel Comics Infinity and Inhumanity. It was here that it became apparent that the Inhumans should be viewed as a threat versus our salvation. When Thanos invaded Earth looking for his son Thane, the Inhuman leader Black Bolt unleashed massive clouds of Terrigen mist into the Earth's atmosphere. This mist soon settled into 2 enormous clouds that mixed with the atmosphere, transforming them into a substance that was toxic for all mutants. In at number 8, the Hulk. There are so many problems with the Hulk's character that it's difficult to pin down just a few for this point. First and foremost, this scary superhero has had a myriad of different actors attempt to properly portray the Green Machine, and just when you think they got it, boom, casting change. It's been years since the Hulk had his own solo film, and for good reason. The character was entirely absent when needed most in Avengers Infinity War, and then Endgame turned him into even more of a joke with this odd new hipster Hulk appearance. Regardless of how much fans hated this, the Hulk still remains as one of the more terrifying superheroes in the MCU. His power is virtually unmatched, and when his anger gets out of control, he only becomes harder to defeat. Not exactly a superhero that you'd want to double cross anytime soon.
Time travel! What?
I see this as an absolute win.
In at number 7, Iron Man. Besides the tired shtick that we've watched Tony Stark do over and over again throughout the MCU, it's his influence as a billionaire weapon manufacturer that makes him both hated and scary. The MCU attempted to move him away from his roots of creating weapons that ultimately land in the wrong hands, killing innocents, by making him more of a mentor for other heroes, but you can never undo the previous films. The cherry on top though was the spawning of Ultron, who took Stark's words for peace and showed us the true evil within those words, only the way that an unfeeling AI can do.
Who sent you?
I see a suit of armor around the world.
Ultron.
In the flesh. Or no, not yet.
The worst part is that in order to defeat this big mistake, he had to create Vision, yet another uncontrolled godlike entity that could have just as easily only made things worse. As smart as Tony Stark is, it's that enormous ego that people not only hate, but are scared of as well, and rightfully so. In at number 6, Shazam. For Billy Batson, it's not just his juvenile nature that audiences didn't care for, it's the fact that there has been a number of changes made to the character itself. People engaged in a heated debate online as to whether or not he was Shazam or Captain Marvel. Either way, he's like a goofy, uncoordinated Superman that just got his powers. Despite all of the name changes and general buffoonery, the character of Shazam is without a doubt scary. He's the ultimate what-if kind of character. I mean, they literally bestowed a teenager with divine empowerment and the physical stature of an adult. The result is absolute carelessness on the part of someone who probably never had to deal with such dire consequences for their actions in their entire life. Sure, he saved that bus full of people in the film, but he's also the one who caused the accident in the first place, making Shazam both hated and feared by those who ride the public transit system in Philadelphia.
Put this thing out again, put this thing out.
Please be a good dog, good dog.
In at number 5, Green Lantern. Hal Jordan is by far no one's favorite Green Lantern. Everything from the dumb version of Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin to the awful portrayal by Ryan Reynolds, fans have had quite the distaste for Green Lantern, leading many fans of DC to even dislike the Lego movie version of the character as well. He didn't even make the cut for Super Friends or the Justice League. That means his own friends had to save the world and opted for not calling him in.
Yeah, I noticed, but fire's no problem for me. As I was saying, Green Lantern can do anything.
Except shut up, apparently.
Even still, we should not forget how powerful Hal as the Green Lantern truly is. His Green Lantern ring mastery gives Hal the ability to bring anything into existence just from thinking about it. This could mean world-ending weapons appearing from nothing and being used in collaboration with his superhuman strength. As much as we dislike him, it's probably a good thing that he's on our side. In at number 4, Aquaman. Aquaman has been the center of internet and comic book fan scrutiny for years. With so many iterations of the character being drawn up and scrapped, fans have relentlessly mocked Aquaman. Jason Momoa's portrayal of the character added a few more layers, but what's worse than being a boring superhero is hating him for being so overpowered. Public service announcements about boating safety aside, the King of the Deep is one scary superhero. Despite being born half human, he has a real distrust and hatred for humans. He almost saves them as a way of proving that he's above them.
It's on him.
In at number 3, Superman. Now here's a classic superhero that we would never ever want to get on the bad side of, yet regardless of the feats of strength that Kal-El has shown, he still gets a ton of hate. Zack Snyder's film portrayed him as the superhero who sort of knew that he was awesome but didn't owe humanity anything, and throughout the comic books his obnoxious rebrands have been the subject of much disdain. All of that aside, it's this boring label that he gets smacked with repeatedly that truly holds his character back. There isn't much complexity to the story of Superman, and because the majority of us understand his origins, we often take him for granted as a superhero. Even in Batman vs Superman, many fans wondered why exactly we needed this type of film and really what good it would do for his reputation. What we saw was that Superman is still a force to be reckoned with, and again, despite our hatred for, a superhero that we should constantly be in fear of. In at number 2, Ghost Rider. It wasn't just the fact that the Ghost Rider movie was played by Nicolas Cage that made fans hate the character, it was the watered down portrayal that truly upset the fans. Ghost Ghost Rider was a character designed for the express purpose of being this edgy R-rated superhero, but that's just not what we got. Even the sequel for the film felt like a cry for help. They just can't let him go, and for good reason. He's terrifying, and the battle of someone being controlled by an evil force but attempting to use it for good is an inherently compelling narrative. This is why we saw Marvel jump ship on the Johnny Blaze version and push forward in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where we saw the Robbie Reyes version of the character making an appearance. Hopefully the new one will be better. Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Cyclops. Scott Summers. Where do we even begin with this white bread, whiny, child endangering superhero? I guess those last 3 remarks are a good place to start. In the eyes of some fans, Cyclops is their favorite team leader, but for many his creepy flirting with teenage Jean Grey was enough for fans to, well, hate his guts. As a result, Scott has been the center and main recipient of a ton of backlash from comic book fans. All of that hatred aside though, Cyclops is without a doubt scary powerful. His optic blasts have gone haywire before, and when he's not leveling cities with his eyes alone, he can be quite the jerk. His bland nature would never make him complex enough to become a villain, but even if he did, I bet his motivations for destroying the world would be Wolverine swooping up his lady.
Summers!
And at number 10, Vengeance. In the 90s, when Dan Ketch was Ghost Rider, Marvel decided to up the ante by introducing this fellow who went by the name of Vengeance. Vengeance, initially an antagonist who debuted in Blaze Spirit of Vengeance issue 9 in 1992, is Lieutenant Michael Battolino, although there would be a second host for Vengeance in the later years. Now similar to Ghost Rider, he is a spirit of vengeance sent from heaven to punish sinners, being one of the last spirits of vengeance in existence. He's a big fan of corporal punishment, hence why he often gets into conflict with Ghost Rider. So how did Battolino become Vengeance? Well, Zarathos' hellfire caused serious psychological damage to his father. His daddy Dearest would then kill the rest of his family and commit suicide, leaving only Michael alive. Later in his life, after a military career and a shift to the NYPD, he came across Daniel Ketch, believing him to be the same Ghost Rider that caused his father to go insane. After failing to get Ketch, he turned to Mephisto, trading his soul in order to be given power strong enough to kill Ghost Rider. And there we have it. But now they're kind of buddies, so. And at number 9, Damon Hellstrom. Hellstrom is the son of Satan. You can tell that he's the son of Satan thanks to that big old pentagram on his chest. Dead giveaway. A Marvel character, his debut was in 1973's Ghost Rider issue 1. He was birthed at the time when occult characters were picking up major steam in the comics industry, with Stan Lee proposing that the publisher create a series that starred Satan himself. Editor Roy Thomas had a few reservations about this. Marvel Spotlight, the series had actually gotten a bit of flack for depicting Satanism and Wiccanism, with critics claiming they were either furthering the cause of evil or depicting these things inaccurately. So instead, he suggested that the focus of the series should be the son of Satan. While his solo series would only last 7 issues, the son of Satan, Damon, became a reoccurring character in the Defenders and even shacked up with Patsy Walker aka Hellcat for a while. These days he is part of the team called Strike Force, which consists of other heroes that are no stranger to the supernatural, including Blade and Angela. Moving on to number 8, Kid Devil. Kid Devil aka Edward Bloomberg aka Red Devil, lots of names with this guy, first hit the scene in 1984. Now back then he was just Eddie, but a year later he would become Kid Devil. Previously a production assistant for a film production company owned by his aunt, Eddie would cross paths with the Blue Devil Dan Cassidy on a film shoot, and become a fan of the hero, wishing to be his sidekick one day. He applied himself, creating a battlesuit for the hero and then helping him foil an airplane hijacking scheme and actually a lot more. But it wasn't until after Infinite Crisis that Eddie would get himself some superpowers. After a mysterious figure gave him a candle called a demon stick, which when someone lights it teleports you to the stick's creator, he ended up encountering Neron. Neron made a deal with him, giving him a demonic appearance and superpowers. Now these days, after the New 52 continuity revamp, Eddie became Blue Devil's godson, calling himself the Red Devil. But he also checked into Sanctuary during Heroes in Crisis, and he was one of the heroes slain in the shooting caused by Wally West, so he's dead. Technically, right now. And at number 7, Alejandra Jones. Alejandra Jones might be one of the lesser known Ghost Rider hosts, but she's still a total bad, although a very inexperienced bad. She's had a rough upbringing. She was the daughter of an American human trafficker sold by her father along with her siblings and other orphans, eventually being trained in a temple in Nicaragua to become the next Ghost Rider by Adam, the first man, like the biblical first man, who was obsessed with ridding the world of sin. Now after Adam convinced Johnny Blaze to give up the curse of being Ghost Rider, Alejandra was chosen to be the next Ghost Rider. Unfortunately for her, her inexperience didn't help much. She was often manipulated, and she was even double-crossed by Blaze himself, which obviously didn't help matters. He offered to train her, but ended up betraying her instead in a scheme to get the curse back and get his Ghost Rider powers. She vowed to get vengeance on Blaze, but that does not look like it'll happen anytime soon. She was killed off in the very recent 2019 Absolute Carnage Symbiote of Vengeance issue 1. Because, spoilers, Carnage has been bonded with the Spirit of Vengeance now, so he's not on this list, but you know. And at number 6, Blue Devil. First appearing in Fury of Firestorm issue 24 from 1984 in a special insert preview, this DC character would soon come into his own right in his own solo title series released that same year. Blue Devil is Dan Cassidy, originally a stuntman and special effects artist who worked in Hollywood. He had created the Blue Devil bodysuit for a film, but during the shoot the demon Nebulos was accidentally unleashed, and upon seeing Cassidy in his blue demon suit, he believed him to be a real demon. So he tried to drain his powers, but in the process he actually bonded Cassidy to the suit, fusing magic and technology together to create an unusual phenomenon. He was turned into a weirdness magnet. He drew the attention of otherworldly beings, and also was a demon. After striking up a deal with Neron, he would actually be fully transformed into a full real-life demon, although he regretted it, now devoting his life to fighting off the occult evil. And at number 5, Robbie Reyes. Reyes is the 5th character to become Ghost Rider, although arguably he is the 2nd most popular. Reyes first appeared in All New Ghost Rider issue 1 in 2014. Reyes started off as a high school kid who wanted to get away from the dangerous streets of East LA and all the gangs that reside there. So he entered a street race with the intention of using the prize money to move away with his brother. He borrows a Dodge Charger from the auto shop that he works at, but little did he know that there were drugs stored in the vehicle's trunk. He ends up being gunned down by mercenaries hired to retrieve those drugs. But that was not the end for Reyes. He ends up being revived as a demonic being, and learns that he is now possessed with a spirit named Eli Morrow, who claims he was killed by gang members and wants to help Reyes on his quest for vengeance. Turns out Eli is actually Robbie's estranged uncle, who was a satanic serial killer. Fun! So that's a whole relationship the two need to work out, and kinda did actually. Anyway, Johnny Blaze hears there's a new Ghost Rider in town and seeks Robbie out, and ends up using his penance stare on Eli's spirit. Now the important difference between Robbie and the other Ghost Rider is that he isn't possessed by the Spirit of Vengeance or another demonic entity. Instead, it is just his uncle Eli. He can also turn to a stronger version of Ghost Rider when really angry, but it is harder for him to control, and that form is more destructive. Moving on to another Ghost Rider, in at number 4, the Cosmic Ghost Rider. Cosmic Ghost Rider is one of the newer characters on our list, and he's an interesting one for sure. Cosmic Ghost Rider is actually Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, but on an alternate Earth, in which he was killed off during an invasion of Earth by Thanos. He was sent to Hell, where he made a deal with Mephisto to bring himself back to life so that he could continue the fight for his home. He actually died when the Hulk smashed into a building and the debris accidentally killed Castle. Now Mephisto endows him with the Spirit of Vengeance, turning him into the Ghost Rider. But little does Castle know that when he is returned to the world of the living, everyone on Earth is already dead and Thanos has moved on. So Castle roams the Earth for years and years and years with only Mephisto to bother in an attempt to not be lonely, and Mephisto even starts ignoring him. But not all is lost. Eventually, one day Galactus comes to the planet seeking help with Thanos. Castle jumps at the opportunity, becoming his herald, endowed with the power Cosmic, hence Cosmic Ghost Rider. Now there's a lot more that happens with his story from there on out, especially as far as Thanos is concerned, but that's for another list another day. Moving on to number 3, Hellboy. Hellboy first hit the scene in Dark Horse Comics in 1993. Created by Mike Mignola, the character is a half-human, half-demon who was summoned to Earth from Hell when he was a baby by Nazi occultists, and also Rasputin. After he was discovered by the Allied forces, he was raised by Professor Trevor Bruttenholm, who would go on to form the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, the organization that Hellboy would grow up and work for, along with a roster of other creative characters fighting against dark forces. Hellboy is anything but malevolent. He's got a great ironic sense of humor, a good heart, and apparently smells like dry roasted peanuts. We would eventually learn that Hellboy had been conceived in 1617 by a witch and the Archduke of Hell. His father would burn away his mother's body to save the child when she tried to repent on her deathbed. Now Daddy Dearest then chopped off the child's arm, replacing it with the right hand of doom, that big rocky thing that Hellboy has for an arm, which would later be revealed to be the key to the end of the world. That is a whole other story for later. This would not go over well in Hell. The Archduke actually had to send Hellboy away and was stripped of his own powers and imprisoned in ice. In at number 2, Johnny Blaze. Johnny Blaze is the OG Ghost Rider, although technically speaking he is the second character to use that mantle. The original fun fact was a character named Carter Slade who would later use the name Phantom Rider, which he's most well known for. That's why we said that thing earlier about Reyes too. There was another guy, but he wasn't really the guy, so. Anyway, Blaze was a motorcycle stuntman who lost his family at a young age. His father, also a stuntman, died in a crash and Johnny was adopted by his dad's employer, a dude named Craig Crash Simpson. Crash was the nickname. When he was old enough, he joined the Simpsons on their traveling stunt show, which is when Blaze learned that Crash had cancer. Blaze looked for ways to help heal Crash, which brought him to researching the occult. He cast a spell that summoned Mephisto, who he naively struck a deal with. He offered Mephisto his soul in order to cure Crash's cancer. The deal was done, but Crash would die anyway, getting into an accident during a stunt in which he tried to jump over 22 cars. Blaze confronted Mephisto, who said Blaze's exact words were to cure his cancer, not to let Crash live. Oof. Unaware of what giving up his soul really meant, he would soon learn that he had been bonded with the demon Zarathos as an act of revenge, transforming him into Ghost Rider, forcing him to punish the wicked. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, we have Spawn. Spawn is yet another product of the 90s and is definitely one of the first characters you think of when you think of Underworld or Hell in comic books. Created by Todd McFarlane, he made his mainstream debut in 1992 in his own self-titled solo series published by Image Comics. Now, Spawn's real name is Albert Francis Simmons, otherwise known as Al Simmons. Simmons had a career in the US Marine Corps before joining up with the Secret Service and becoming a CIA assassin. He is then murdered on a botched mission. It's later revealed that his partner and best friend Bruce was told to kill him by his superiors. And because of the nature of his work as an assassin, Al finds himself in hell. Distraught by this, he makes a deal with the devil, agreeing to become Hellspawn in exchange for seeing his wife Wanda one last time. But little does he know that the devil plans on tricking him. When he becomes Hellspawn, or rather Spawn, he loses his memory of his past on Earth minus the fact that his name was Al Simmons. His body is also covered in massive burns, and he has a demonic guardian named Violator, who soon becomes one of Spawn's biggest antagonists.
In a 10, Squirrel Girl. There are 2 types of people in this world, those who have heard of Squirrel Girl and those who don't know what true happiness really is. Suffering a modification in her genes for unknown reasons, Doreen Green gained squirrel-like abilities, most obviously in the form of a prehensile tail, but she was somehow not a mutant. She realized she could communicate with squirrels when she overheard one in her window. She saved it from being chased by a dog and they ultimately became friends. That squirrel encouraged her to use her powers to help people, but he also called himself Monkey Joe, so I don't know if he was a comedian or just stupid. Her first appearance was in Marvel's Superheroes Volume 2 number 8 in 1991 alongside Iron Man, but only really got traction in the 21st century when fans went nuts for her. Get it? Nuts for her? Because she's a squirrel girl. Well, anyway, due to her popularity and wholesome nature, there isn't really gonna be an opportunity for her to get killed off, especially when she's gone up against Galactus, Thanos, and Doctor Doom without a scratch. Unless we believe Rick and Morty, which says that if you overhear squirrels, you're gonna have to leave the whole dimension. So I think that's really the scary part. She's probably in cahoots with the squirrels, toppling nations. You know. In at 9, Headpool. On Earth 2149, the reality was similar to that of the 616 universe we are familiar with only a few differences. One of them being Steve Rogers was Colonel America, and one of them being a literal zombie plague that turned all superheroes into zombies. Fairly topical if you ask me. Well, the Deadpool of this universe has another thing coming, since after a fight with the Silver Surfer, he was brought to Earth 616, where he took out Jennifer Kale's magic. He was thought to have been killed when he got lured into the blades of a nearby skiff, completely obliterating him. But since he was the only one with the virus on this Earth, he was contained by armor. Deadpool was now only a head, but still managed to escape Armor HQ with the help of Simon Garth. Headpool is basically just zombie Deadpool's head, and the fact that this exists is so Deadpool it hurts. And the fact that he didn't die when reduced to only a head is something that would literally kill almost anyone else is proof enough that Headpool cannot be killed. The merc with half a mouth is still hopping around and gonna bust a cap in your ass because it's the only thing he can reach with the gun. Pretty funny, but still scary since, you know, it's a thing. It's a zombie head. Jeez. And it ain't Lobo. Let's face it, Lobo is one pretty scary looking dude. While first he was introduced as a villain in the 80s, he was revived as an anti-hero in the early 90s after his creators forgot about him. How can you forget about him? Lobo is one crazy bounty hunter, with muscles that are more ripped than my homework every time I told my teachers that my dog had eaten it. I didn't have a dog. And with the attitude and outfit to match. I think the scariest part about him though is just the hair. He even ended up joining the new Justice League at one point, becoming one of its founding members. Lobo probably has one of the coolest power sets. While it may not be super speed or the power of the gods, he can shake off blows from even Superman, taking planet-destroying attacks without a scratch. But he is also banned from entering both heaven and hell, making him functionally immortal. If you aren't allowed to enter the afterlife, I'm pretty sure you won't be able to even get the chance to.
And honestly, I'm already banned from entering one of them, so all I need is the other one to hate me and I'm golden. I'll be in the same boat as Lobo. Just wish I had those muscles though. And at 7, the Eternal Warrior. Being named such because he existed prior to recorded history, the Eternal Warrior is one of 3 brothers who are also as ancient as my 12th grade contact teacher. Boom! I haven't let it go. He has defended Earth for thousands of years and has acquired a millennia of military knowledge, and more than just that, he has seen history unfold. Other than being immortal, he possesses increased strength, agility, incredible durability, and an incredibly impressive healing factor that allowed him to survive nuclear fallout. Within the Valiant universe that he was written into, there is no known way of killing him. He is sworn to protect the Geomancers to ensure their survival. These people have a special bond with the Earth, and there must always be one alive to protect it and speak for it. In more ways than one, the Eternal Warrior is the protector of Earth more than Hal Jordan or any other hero. As long as the planet exists, the Eternal Warrior will as well, which is pretty dope. When only the inevitable heat death of the universe can kill you? I'd take that. And at 6, Ghost Rider. Johnny Blaze agrees to give his soul to the devil in order to save his father's life. Because of this, at night, when he is around evil, he becomes surrounded in literal hellfire and his head becomes a fiery skull. First appearing in Marvel Spotlight number 5, Ghost Rider rides a fiery motorcycle and can launch blasts of hellfire from his typically skeletal hands. There have been many incarnations of Ghost Rider over the years, notably Johnny Blaze, Noble Kane, Danny Ketch, and Robbie Reyes. The fact that there will never not be a Ghost Rider serves as more of a permanent way of not being able to die, but that's in spirit. The whole making a deal with the devil and becoming a literal hellfire demon when around evil thing helps too, and is probably more along the lines of what was expected for this list, especially because who doesn't want to ride a motorcycle that cool? I remember in high school I wanted to get my motorcycle license instead of my driver's license since I could drive a motorcycle by myself faster than a car, but my mom wouldn't let me. Well, look at me now, Mom. On my own and unable to afford the test or even a damn motorcycle. Halfway through number 5, the Hulk. The Hulk is one bad mamma jamma, and the fact that he is made from radiation should remind you that there is no way of killing this guy. Bruce himself even said in the first Avengers movie he tried to kill himself as Bruce, but Hulk spit the bullet out. This is even further solidified by the Future Imperfect storyline, when Hulk is brought 100 years into the future and sees himself, still alive even after a nuclear war that had killed almost all of Earth's superhumans. This war, by the way, had also taken the world to the brink of extinction, meaning Hulk, or Maestro as he was known then, was one of the only remaining souls in existence. But I guess technically that can be said about all of us, even right now. This, in combination with Maestro absorbing the radiation from the nukes, giving him increased strength, proves to be too much for Professor Hulk. Maestro is only able to be destroyed by the same bomb that created the Hulk in the first place, which is honestly understandable, like when your parents say, I brought you into this world, I can take you out, even though they legally can't, but that's aside the point. If you can only be destroyed by the thing that created you, you will never be able to be destroyed again, unless time travel is possible, in which case this was, so yeah. And at 4, the Spectre. The Spectre is an entity who needs to bind itself to the soul of a human being. However, the human who becomes the Spectre must already be dead, which may defeat the purposes of this list if you think about it, but I'm talking about the Spectre itself, not the person it inhabits, so apples and oranges. The Spectre is omnipotent and immortal, having powers over reality, interdimensional travel, technically resurrection, and increasing to infinite size and a lot more that honestly doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But in honesty, it's comics. Not making sense makes it make sense. Just like that sentence. The Spectre has had many hosts over the years, Jim Corrigan, Crispus Allen, Hal Jordan, and Oliver Queen to name a few. The latter being in the CW's Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, where while Oliver Queen might have died, the Spectre itself is impossible to destroy, making him probably the most powerful being in the DC universe. I kinda wanna be the Spectre, that green cloak's kinda bomb. Not gonna lie. And at 3, Franklin Richards. Hey, it's Franklin. Franklin Richards is one powerful kiddo, like the son of a Karen who stepped on a Lego with a full shoe on, but who's crying because he broke the Lego powerful. The mutant son of Sue Storm and Reed Richards is one of the most powerful beings in Marvel canon. This Omega level mutant possesses the ability to completely alter reality, and that in a way makes him immortal. Having complete control over the fundamental forces of the universe is a pretty big power to have when you're a toddler who just wants chicky nugs and choco milk. His powers even allowing him to perceive future events. Sure, you could just push him out a window after you climbed up a tower, but hell, he'll just come back in a wheelchair and become king later on. What I'm saying with that analogy that is as good as the ending is that he would see it coming, and could just alter life so that it would never happen. Plus, he can travel through time. This kid can make a pocket universe under his bed sheets while he should be sleeping. The laws of reality don't apply to this kid, so you will never be able to kill him. He's just too damn powerful. He is literally God. And to everyone on Earth 10011. Earth 10011 is also known as the Cancerverse, an Earth whose history is identical to that of the main Earth 616, but with the Avatar of Death being destroyed when Mar-Vell was on his deathbed. Using a ritual known as necropsy, they eliminated the Avatar of Death, making it impossible for anyone to ever die on this Earth. However, this doesn't mean that you stay in your prime forever. No, the Avatar of Aging, if that's even a thing, is still kicking, and you're gonna have more wrinkles than a Kardashian before she goes to see Dr. Fix Me Up. Death is literally dead. There is no way you can die on this Earth. That is all I can say about this. And that just proves my point. I wanted this to be number 1, but there is something more current that I feel will make more sense in this context. But like after this whole thing has died out, no pun intended, I guess it won't really make more sense. Whatever. Finally, in at number 1, Liesl Pan. Liesl Pan is one of the more obscure members of the Green Lantern Corps. I'd say honestly one of the most obscure. And while Liesl may not be able to be killed, the reasoning requires some explanation. Liesl Pan is a smallpox virus, being microscopic yet sentient and capable enough to wield the Green Lantern ring. It goes on missions that other Green Lanterns can't undertake, be it physically or biologically. To be honest, Liesl has played an integral role in various Lantern events, like in the Sinestro Corps War, where he helped to save Guy Gardner's life by defeating Sinestro's virus. Liesl cannot be killed because he's a virus, and technically a virus is not a living organism. Viruses are defined as organisms on the edge of life, since they defy all standard definitions of being alive. So while they're almost alive, they're not, and therefore cannot be killed in the same way. It can be destroyed, but it can't be killed, because technically it was never really alive. And I figured a virus was pretty topical for this list, so there you go. It might be cheating, but I don't care.
He can manipulate his body at will, becoming a living battering ram or an unstoppable force of nature. He commands the very elements, bending fire, earth, and even time to his will. He's a one-man army wielding the power of 6,000 lost souls. You think you know Spawn? Think again. Today we are looking at Spawn's superpowers that you never knew he had. First up, he can modify his own density. Ever casually stopped a speeding car with your bare hands? Yeah, didn't think so, but for Spawn, it's a mundane Tuesday. This guy can manipulate the very fabric of his necroplasmic body, altering his density at will. He can become as ethereal as a wisp of smoke or as immovable as a mountain. Picture this, a hulking 500-pound behemoth suddenly transforming into an 8,000-pound juggernaut of impenetrable muscle and bone. One moment he's dodging bullets, the next he's a living, breathing roadblock, crumpling a speeding car like a discarded soda can. Now let's delve into the truly fascinating aspects of Spawn's physiology. His body isn't merely human, it's forged from necroplasm, a sentient symbiotic substance birthed in the infernal depths of hell. This otherworldly goo defies the laws of nature as we know them. He doesn't require organs, blood, or even oxygen to function. He simply is. But here's where it gets truly bizarre. Despite his demonic transformation, he retains the shell of his human form. A beating heart, a pair of lungs, a tangle of intestines, the whole package. Why? Perhaps it's a subconscious tether to his fading humanity, a haunting reminder of the man he once was. Or maybe it's just a twisted joke of his demonic creators. Whatever the reason, these lingering human elements make him incredibly difficult to destroy. You can sever his limbs, rip out his still beating heart, even obliterate him with explosives. He'll just keep coming back. Remember that time Violator, the demonic clown and Spawn's eternal nemesis, gleefully tore out his heart? Yeah, that didn't quite go as planned. Spawn simply regenerated, good as new, with a renewed thirst for vengeance. It's as if his body possesses a supernatural undo button for any injury, no matter how grievous. Talk about a convenient perk in the chaotic world of demon hunting. But even a powerhouse like Spawn requires a recharge every now and then. In his early days, his methods for replenishing his necroplasmic energy were, let's just say, unconventional. Imagine this, Spawn lurking in a shadowy alleyway, a swarm of insects erupting from his mouth. He'd literally devour these creepy crawlies, draining them of their life force and dark energy. Not exactly a sight for the faint of heart, but hey, desperate times call for desperate measures. He's since evolved, drawing sustenance from the evil that festers within the hearts of men, a more efficient, albeit morally ambiguous, power source. But Spawn's powers extend beyond the realm of human suffering. He also possesses a unique connection to the natural world, a verdant touch that allows him to command the very forces of nature. Thanks to a symbiotic bond with the Emerald Parliament of Greensworld, he can summon thorny vines to ensnare his foes, manipulate the earth to create devastating earthquakes, and even imprison malevolent deities beneath the planet's crust. Remember Urizen, the ancient soul-devouring deity? Spawn single-handedly brought him down, using his newfound powers to entomb him deep within the earth. Talk about a power move. Let's face it, if we didn't need to rely on our legs to get us from one place to another, we would try just about anything else. They did it in Star Trek all the time, and so does Spawn. Well, not all the time, since it apparently doesn't feel very good. Spawn has been known to teleport throughout the series, whenever he needs to either get the hell out of somewhere fast, or get into a place without being seen. He has been shown to do this in more than one way, so it isn't fully clear how he goes about it. In the example pictured here, he turns himself into a sort of snot that shoots through space to his desired location, where he reforms into his real body. In some other instances of teleportation, it appears that Spawn can travel through shadows. He might just pop out of a shadowy place where he wasn't before, or disappear into a shadow and reappear in an alleyway somewhere. Not only can he move from place to place, he can also hop from realities through portals. Frankly, his movement isn't at all limited when he decides he wants to go somewhere. When you get your powers directly from hell, it shouldn't come as a surprise that you have some control over fire. Not only can Spawn breathe hellfire at will, he can also control it on, in, and around him. Spawn's dominance over fire has enabled him to travel into and out of hell on multiple occasions, and he is able to shoot out energy bolts composed of necroplasm, which look a lot like hellfire itself. At one point, to demonstrate his powers, he essentially pukes hellfire just because he can. He doesn't require anything to create fire either, and can manifest it whenever and wherever he pleases. One of Spawn's greatest assets is his costume. A Spawn's costume is a living symbiote that entangles itself with a Spawn's nervous system and feeds on their necroplasm for energy. Al Simmons' suit is called Letha of the 7th House of K and is an immensely powerful entity on its own. With his costume, he can manifest and manipulate chains, spikes, armor, his size, and especially his cape, which is one of his greatest tools. Spawn relies on Letha constantly so that he can retain his powers. The suite even defends him subconsciously. Whenever Spawn is unconscious or just not paying attention to his surroundings, the costume will protect him in a multitude of ways. Now, let's revisit that whole regeneration thing. It's not just about shrugging off injuries. Spawn can literally rebuild himself from scratch. Lost a face in a brutal battle? No problem, he'll just stitch it back together with some necroplasm and a rusty shoestring. This guy prioritizes practicality over vanity. He once regenerated his entire body after being blown to smithereens, simply because he grew tired of existing as a sentient puddle of goo. Talk about dedication to the cause. He can even shape his necroplasm into weapons, armor, and even fully functional wings, allowing him to take to the skies and rain down hellfire upon his enemies. But here's the truly remarkable aspect of Spawn's power. He's not alone in his eternal struggle. He carries within him the tormented souls of 6,000 lost souls, collectively known as the Legion. These are the individuals who perished in the same fateful hour as Al Simmons, unknowingly bound to him in the afterlife. They are his spectral army, his support system, his unwavering connection to the humanity he left behind. He can summon them at will, unleashing a legion of ghostly warriors upon his unsuspecting foes. Sadly, their numbers dwindle with each passing battle. Every fallen soldier from the Legion takes a piece of Spawn with them, a constant and agonizing reminder of the cost of his war against the forces of darkness. And for the grand finale, the pièce de résistance of Spawn's power. Are you ready for this? He can manipulate time itself. Yes, you heard that right. He can literally freeze the world around him, creating a pocket of eerie stillness amidst the chaos of battle. Imagine the possibilities. Rearranging the battlefield to his advantage, outmaneuvering his enemies with precognitive precision, even taking a leisurely coffee break while the world remains frozen in time. This power is so incredibly overpowered that it rarely even made an appearance in the comics, but it serves as a testament to the sheer scope and potential of Spawn's abilities. A chilling reminder that he's not just a hell spawn, he's a force of nature. So there you have it, a glimpse into the mind-boggling, ever-evolving power of Spawn. He's a demon, a soldier, a reluctant savior, and a walking paradox, but the excitement doesn't stop there. With Todd McFarlane expanding the Spawn universe with new titles like King Spawn, Gunslinger Spawn, and The Scorched, we're seeing a whole new era of Hellspawn rising. These new characters, each with their own unique powers and motivations, are set to challenge the status quo and redefine the boundaries of the Spawn universe. Will these new Hellspawn be allies or enemies to Al Simmons? Will they challenge his authority or seek his guidance?